it's approximately 93 kids a year in this country die, and that's under 3-year-olds of suffocation or airway obstruction, according to Starship Children's Hospital, which is a lot.
Welcome to Fika's Focus. Voices leading change.
Kia ora everyone, kia ora to Steph and Si.
Hey, kia ora Ray, morena to you and to the Future Focus whānau and obviously everybody else listening in today. Awesome being here, man.
Yeah, we're stoked to have you guys here. So a bit of background. I've actually known Steph and Si for quite a while. Was involved with Steph on and off when she was involved in weightlifting, and that's Steph is a Commonwealth Games representative, Gold Coast, and extremely strong human. Then met Si through Steph, and then it's been a cool. We've seen them have babies, and so they're 2 babies deep at the moment.
Done.
But Xander and Kaylin, and it's been cool to see your guys' business really take off. If you're ever looking, people say I'm passionate about things, but I think once you hear these guys have a kōrero about passion, you'll see deeply insightful and knowledgeable, and also just passionate about the subjects that we're going to talk to today. We probably don't have a Joe Rogan 3-hour podcast. We could, but we'll try and keep it short, sharp, and to the point. But we really appreciate, A, the mahi that we're doing with you guys. That's the first thing I think is really important. But B, just having your presence in and around what we're up to.
Appreciate that, thank you.
So let's just start first. Si, you've been in the military and things. Just do you want to give us a short background on that sort of space and what you're up to?
Yeah, sweet. No dramas, bro. So, obviously we met through Steph. There's that kind of mutual connection there. As we were talking about just before, obviously we kicked off here, there's like 0.25 degrees of separation in this country.
Literally.
It's ridiculous. So there's a lot of mutual connections there. But basically, for myself, I joined straight out of school, straight into the military, New Zealand Defence Force Army. Went into the infantry, spent just under 11 years in there, 4 deployments overseas, one for Haida, which was the Asian tsunami, response to basically a peacekeeping operation, which was Guadalcanal, Solomon Islands, and 2 non-conventional warfare deployments to Afghanistan as well. After that, did a bunch of private military contracting. Once I kind of fell out of love with the whole kind of military thing, largely because we stopped going overseas and some other things. I mean, that's a bit of a deep dive, maybe another chat for another day. But basically went overseas and continued to apply my trade. Finished up in 2017 after working in a number of different countries, and basically came back just purely because the life is very bipolar. You know, you're doing anywhere between 3 to 4 weeks on, 2 weeks off, out to 8 to 12 weeks on and 4 weeks off. Yeah. And when you're consistently in that environment, it is not very healthy for relationships and for your own being as well. Things you miss out on is those weddings, those funerals. You don't get a choice when you're on and off, basically. So I decided to call it quits there. Quit while I was ahead, I guess. It's a reverse lottery as well. Some of the places that you work are, it's no joke. Every time you kind of leave the wire, which was every single day for myself and my teams, becomes, a bit of a roll of the dice. So, finished up, wrapped up there, came back to NZ, started basically delivering first aid courses and other industrial-based courses, and figured out very, very quickly, in particular in the first aid space, that the stuff which was being taught just simply doesn't work. In my experience, particularly the private military contracting side of the house, anybody can squeeze a trigger. Anybody can do that. It's not difficult, but can you fix somebody up? I went through and obviously got some further education around that, and also had some absolutely terrific mentors along the way. And of course, you learn on the job. So it's one of these things that, you go back, reflect, you have a good outcome, you reflect on that. You have a negative outcome, you need to reflect on that as well. And for me, that was a big part of that learning process, was going back through and talking to people that I knew about that, and who certainly knew a lot more than what I did as well. So that was awesome. But basically, back in New Zealand, kind of fast forwarding in, kind of jumping all over the show, but back in NZ, figured out things didn't work within what I was teaching at the time. The standard you accept is the standard that you walk past. I refuse to do that. I'm wasting my own time. I'm literally going through and teaching somebody something which is incorrect. I can't do that morally. And a big part of that is from where a lot of this passion comes from, as you spoke about before, was having to watch one of my caregivers essentially die on the side of the road. Before I joined military, I looked at that and said, okay, I don't want anybody to feel the way that I felt that day, which was just absolutely helpless. Excuse the language. But yeah, that's...
there's no kids listening to it.
It was that was for me one of the I guess kind of the worst days. Just that hopeless feeling. When you have the skills, when you have the equipment, when you have the knowledge, the training, everything else like that, it makes kind of moving through these things a little bit easier because you can look at it objectively, especially when you have a community around you which can support you. You can go through and break these things down with and say, yes, we did everything we could. No, we maybe need to tune up or acquire something or do further training here or there. That makes processing a little bit easier, but when you don't have that, it does become very difficult.
So let's, so Steph, in that sense, when we've been talking through about things, we've got to really eliminate this almost facade of people believing in a trauma situation that you've got all the resources at hand. That's actually not real. It's not true. It's not realistic. So what we're talking about is being able to support people at that moment, which is 20 million times out of 20 million and one that you're not going to be in a hospital, supported by medical staff, all the bells and whistles to come in and help. And obviously in our space, we're talking about children, but also adults, because there's a lot of adults around whānau and teachers and things. You know, anything could happen. Anything. I mean, I don't know if you guys heard, there's the guy that had the heart attack down surfing at Pat Beach, you know, and he's lucky that people actually knew what to do there and get him because he's still alive. But it is that scenario. So, Steph, in that space, could you talk to us a wee bit? I can't remember the wording you guys use, but it's about dealing with a situation as it is right in front of you without all those bells and whistles.
So that's what we call point of injury care.
Point of injury, that's it, yes.
Yeah, and that's you know, for me, so I'm probably the only person in the business apart from one of our other admin staff who has no official medical background. And this is the thing that I got really captured in on Simon's passion when I first, you know, we were early in our relationship when he first started this business. And I had thought, you know, in my head, most other people do, right? The police are always going to be there to catch the bad guys. The ambulance is only around the corner.
Helicopters, everything.
Helicopters, They're going to bring SWAT is coming for me. Like, we don't even have SWAT.
Baywatch at the beach.
Pamela is coming. So, so I probably have the same, well, I had the same conception that most people do. And that's why I find it really interesting when we sort of deconflict our backgrounds, because I come at it from the normal person perspective, I call it, and then everyone else in our business comes at it from the, you know, higher education, and they've seen some hardcore things. I've never seen anything horrific, and thank goodness, and I touch wood, I never do. So what we're talking about there is point of injury care. And when I came into the business, like most people, I sort of was like, first aid, cool. Like, what a cool passion, man.
Cool, bro.
Yeah. But, you know, pretty much. New relationship and whatnot. I was like, I'm gonna give this my full attention. And it was only after I first started sitting through some of the courses that I started really understanding where Simon and his passion was coming from. And then now, obviously, as the team's expanded and I've got more and more, you know, data stories from our students who've come back and people who we've influenced, you know, as the sort of the conduit between the initial understanding to the current understanding. It's like, oh my God, I did not know. I did not know anything. I was so naive, and I was so, it's kind of terrifying that I'd gotten through, you know, I won't say how many years, starting to go the old grays, but I'd gotten through a lot of years of life, very lucky. And, you know, especially doing some of the activities that I did and, you know, the 20s and all of those things, as lucky as to not see some stuff and not be involved in things. And, what we're talking about, what we're really passionate about, is that point of injury care, which is that the moment between when something happens and when help arrives. And that time frame, I mean, Simon will be better with the stats on this, but that time frame depends very greatly on where you are in the country, what activities you're up to, how bad the injury or a medical condition is, what other calls there are at that time. You know, if we're talking really severe things, what the weather's doing, like, can they even send a chopper? And this is something we talk a lot with some of our high risk clients is, you know, the chopper might not be coming for days, you know, and obviously, again, in the context of children and the childcare centres, that's probably not so much a concern. But it's there is a big gap, and what our goal is to try and empower people with the skills and the knowledge and the confidence to be able to handle that situation from the what we call the oh shit moment, like going about your day, you're just cooking your lunch, or you're just about to put some kids down for their nap, and then something happens that is unexpected, it's out of the ordinary, and you don't have the time to go back to flick through your little first aid book that you got in your first aid course 2 years ago. You have to go and rely on the skills and the knowledge that you've got right now, the equipment that you've got right now, and then bridge that gap between now to when the help arrives. Are you alone? Do you have people with you? Have you got other screaming kids that you need to consider? Like the environmental concerns, there's a huge amount of things that we were trying to, we're trying to navigate. And, but basically the way we do that is by doing the basics and doing them well. Yes. And again, Simon will talk on that, in much more detail.
So just so we're clear, so a point of injury, what we're saying is an incident happens, right? So that becomes your point of injury. And let's use choking because we're on this today.
Yes.
So let's just say little Ray is sitting down at the table and he's picked up a piece of cucumber and he swallowed it, and then the staff member realises that he's silently choking. Now we're in a point of injury site. Yep. And then from there to then the actions we take are really critical in terms of A, survival, obviously, but B, no long-term damage, and like you said, is actually being able to act accordingly with the necessary skills and knowledge, but actually the confidence to cope. Yeah.
Yeah, 110%. I'll just jump on that real quick. Is that you're on the money. Point of injury care is those immediate life-saving kind of actions before ambulatory can get through to you, or ambulance can get through to you. And when we look at it, when we're dealing with infants, toddlers, children, we have less time, and it's just as simple as that. One thing that I'll just jump on that you just said, which I think is very, very important, when we look through all the available data, all the statistics, everything else like that, it's reasonably easy to find data on mortality in terms of that, and it's approximately 93 kids a year in this country die, and that's under 3-year-olds of suffocation or airway obstruction, according to Starship Children's Hospital. Which is a lot when you look at it. I mean, 93 may not seem like a huge number if you were to remove all the emotion, obviously, of involving children when the population is 5 million. But then we look at how many people or how many children, what is the population in New Zealand under that age or in the age bracket? And there's nothing I could find, which was really definitive for under 3s. But when you look at it under that kind of 5-year mark, it's around about 300,000 people. So, 600,000 people from one of the latest censuses. So, when we look at that, the number actually becomes pretty radical.
And that's death.
Yeah, and that's death. So and that's not including. There's nothing I could find about the long-lasting impacts of
long-term injury,
hypoxia or hypoxemia of the brain. For those who are listening, big words. Essentially, that means starvation of oxygen or lack of oxygen to the actual brain tissue. Which is obviously incredibly impactful moving forward in terms of development, in terms of learning, in terms of just motor function in general, all these other things like that. I mean, there is there's a cherry on top of this really ugly cake, and that is that children are obviously quite neuroplastic, and I'm not going to expand too much on that simply because I'm not an expert on the brain. Speak to somebody who is, and maybe we'll get somebody on board. I actually have a friend who is an expert on the brain. We will be getting that person on board to speak about this topic in more broad context. But it's a great point. It's not just about mortality; it's about going through and having the best possible outcome with regards to, reduction of impact on that child and for the rest of their life as well, because this is lifelong. We don't have the ability to regenerate brain cells. It's just not where we're at.
Just on that as well, and obviously we talk a lot in the context of mortality and injury, et cetera, but any of these emergencies, any of these first aid or traumatic or medical emergencies have not just that impact, it's the ripple effect, right? It's the mental health. As a mum, the thought of, the few times that there's been like nothing major, but, a finger in the door or something, those things that just happen, you think about that for days and weeks and months. I couldn't imagine the the thoughts and feelings that must go through after an event. So even though we're talking mortality and survivability and you know, for the child, the ripple effects for the whānau is just, it's huge. And that's, you could never metricize that, and they would never keep stats on that, but it would be significant.
And let's be real, like in today's world, there is a lot more anxiety around that. When we all grew up, you know, how, you know, so I was talking about a mate, Taru Tira Popo, you might hear this, but, you know, as kids in Tokoroa growing up, bro, we were like going down rivers and on things. We were, you know, you were riding your bike and falling and crashing and smashing and throwing rocks at each other. Like how we still have some of the brain cells we have, I don't know. But also what I can say in that space and what we're trying to help whānaus do is we want to alleviate as much anxiety so that when they are bringing their children and they feel in that instance that something happens, we are equipped to deal with it and deal with it appropriately. But also the second thing is it's peace of mind.
Yes.
Because as we know, we're parents in this space. They're our most precious gift. They are our succession. They are the people that we just, you know, until you have children, you realise how much love you really have, and we were lucky to have a parent speak to us yesterday about her special child in that space. It's just that is a damage that many couples do not recover from in the passing of a child. So, and you say 93, so I just added 3 people in that space, so let's add 3 other family members. You were talking about 300 people, and then that's in the instant community of people of death, and then you're looking at the wider things. And that's, we've got to make sure we are capable of avoiding that. And to this, and this is what I love about Simon and Steph, they said to us, there's always going to be something go wrong, and someone actually might pass away. But you want to know that you've done everything you can. And it is that situation that has really driven us into this space around making sure we're using the best to help us be the best for not just the educational space, not just the holistic safety space, but actually pure safety that we can cope and support if something happens. So let's talk to I know Sai's got some awesome stats on that. We've already said about the 93 kids, but in terms of just choking itself, let's start with this. So we are engaging with Simon and Steph. They're really helping us in that space, and we're really honing in on choking. You know, I know it was the second highest outside of
traumatic brain injury,
yeah,
so or blunt force trauma, which is the leading cause of death for pediatrics in this country at the moment, which is obviously horrific. But I mean the numbers seem to be dropping a little bit in every instance. But it's still way too high. Like I said.
Well,
93, and it's just going back to what you just said before, Ray. It's not just about going through. Once you understand once you understand properly and educated properly around this, around choking, around the very, very basic anatomy, physiology of the airway and how the respiratory system works, the impacts on the brain and everything else like that. What it does is our intent behind a lot of this is to switch not just the mind on in terms of what we can actually do if you have your worst day, but also on top of that is going around and actually looking at it from a a case of prevention. So what is actually what is the causation of this? Because we saw the reforms happen after it was back maybe 10, 15 years ago. There was a young kid who died choked on a piece of apple, and all of a sudden everyone's like, oh my god, we've got a great apple. You're looking at one very specific item which is causing this. We're not looking at the actual mechanism, which is a blockage of the airway. And when you start looking at that, it becomes very frightening. Things like balloons. It doesn't matter whether it's apple, whether it's zucchini, button batteries. Anything. Which a toddler or a child can put into their mouth, and they're very sensory. They're exploring. They're going through and figuring things out for themselves. Batteries, AAAs, all these things like that. It's a real.
And the world's gotten that way. That everything has to become smaller in the world today. That's the real definition of technology improving. So take AAAs. I was just thinking then, bro. All I remember as kids, the batteries are the ones after you went like, oh, you got a shot. You know, I don't.
Did you even grow up in New Zealand?
Didn't do that. Yeah. Come on, man, you got to do this. Otherwise, you're not in the team. But I don't really recall. I certainly don't recall AAAs, and I'm young, kind of.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't recall, but it's also the round. Those round ones, you know, the old watch batteries.
CR123s.
Yes, you know, so it is those hazards around home. I mean, obviously we mitigate all of that within a centre, but it is broken bits, it's car bits or pieces that we've got to constantly mitigate in that space. But what you're saying, prevention is far better, and that's why we have hazard checks and things like that, and we continue to be thorough on those things, throwing out broken equipment, and that's why I know a lot of centres, bro, they tend to stay away from plastic stuff now, purely because parts break. You know, it's all that sort of stuff is preventative, but then in the heat of it and the point of injury, how long, Steph, how long do we have?
So when you're dealing with choking, you're dealing with two different presentations. So it's very subjective. I can't, I'm not going to go ahead and say you have, 1 minute, 10 minutes, whatever else. When we're looking at the choking, we've got partial or we've got complete. So partial, what this means is essentially you have a partial blockage of the airway, which is not good. Now, they'll generally present with some sort of noise, rattling, whistling, what have you, crackling, that you can hear because the object is sitting there, it's trapped, but it's not completely blocking off the airway. So you have some sort of communication. Now, again, that becomes subjective of, how long we have, so to speak, because there's still air getting in and out.
Yes.
And it's really how much air is getting in and out. So really, when it comes down to that, there is no number associated. When you have complete occlusion of an airway, that's where it becomes a little bit more definitive. And again, there is no hard and fast number. The number that I look at, work off, is basically, okay, well, we're going to start, becoming hypoxic within about a minute, maybe 90 seconds, that airway is completely blocked off. There's no gas exchange happening or anything else like that. So we need to get that thing freed up. So we just don't have long. So that's why attention to what is actually going on at, these high-risk times, particularly feeding and stuff like that, and why making sure that we've got eyes on, what's actually happening within a room is so important. And man, I come and drop my kids off at the centres. I'm looking around. I do not envy the job. The amount of mental energy which must be expended, all day. The way that staff must position themselves, I think of it, throwback here, from a tactical perspective, back to the military. It's like you can't, if you get drawn in, you're sucked in, and you're focusing on one activity or whatever else in the centre, or a quarter of a room or whatever else, then that is incredibly resource drawing and draining. Whereas if I'm standing in a corner on the side, I can see absolutely everything, which is happening in the room a lot easier anyway. And the staff, you just can't do it. It's not a prison. It's not like
I even think back to myself when my first year teaching, I had 32 5-year-olds.
Wow.
And I'd be sitting there. I had this kid Angus. He'd always eat my lunch, and the guy used to just. I remember the first time he just came and took my sandwich. He just eaten it, and he says, "Oh, it's not yours unless it's behind your tonsils, Mr. Everest." But I think about sitting there watching these.
He taxed your sandwich.
Yeah. He's a cracker. He'd be about 23 now. But what I'm saying in that window there, even. Sure, there was no way that I was going to observe someone in that space. We talk, so just so we're clear for people, and I know a lot of whānau probably don't know this, it is regulation that when children are eating, even if it's one, there needs to be an adult sitting at their height. It's like us sitting at this height. I can actually see you front on. Initially, I didn't agree with it because I was like, well, if I see someone choking, I can move quicker standing. But when we're sitting down and actually with the kids, it is quite clear that we can absolutely move and be scanning for what's going on. But coming back further, even food preparation and how it's done, yes, like the apples thing, because we spoke about it earlier. Now that's why they are boiled, peeled, those sorts of things. We tend to not give fruit with edges. That's you're trying to do all that stuff and mitigate that, and we actually got Takia coming in to talk about some of that stuff later. But it is, the prevention piece is really important.
Massive.
So in terms of what are some of the signs with an effective first responder that is actually what are some of the indications of confidence and knowledge and things that we should expect to see from one of our team who's like, shit, there's an incident going on, I'm now in that point of injury, what should I be doing in that, what should it look like in that scenario?
Yeah, sweet. So I think the number one thing is to stay calm
Yes.
and just recognise what is actually happening. So taking time to do that assessment, and also making sure that we, I know this is kind of cliche, but follow our algorithms. And there's a reason those algorithms exist. So dangers, and we'll talk about this right here, right now. The danger that I see presenting straight away is the potential, because when it rains, it pours. Anybody who's spent any kind of time in the game with regards to meat understands that, especially point of injury care, is that basically if you have one kid, it's going to turn into two if you're just not expecting that. So dangerous, the first thing I'm going to do is make sure those kids are monitored by somebody else or just stop eating immediately, because one of them takes a gasp, or they got half a mouthful or whatever else, or gets a fright or goes to cry because, there's sudden movement and there's panic, and all of a sudden, now you've got two kids who are choking potentially. So staying calm is the number one, and obviously, going through and assessing with regards to the airway, is this partial or is this complete? If there is any noise whatsoever, that's partial, and we run through our drills immediately with that, where we just start engaging back blows. Now, particularly for kids, gravity is really the key.
Yes.
In terms of making sure, and this is with any airway drill, there's been so much kind of fascination around different, high level men, placing of adjuncts and all this other stuff like that. But I've always been a big fan of using positioning. Gravity is either your best friend or its worst enemy, which means essentially we need to get the airway or the mouth at the lowest point. And the whole reason for this is simple. If you free something up out of the back of children's airway, if it's sitting under the epiglottis, which is a piece of tissue that sits on the back of the tongue, the purpose of that is to slide food down into your esophagus. But this is usually where choking incidents occur, is just food will get lodged just under the epiglottis. So no matter how much you swallow, that food is not going to go down the esophagus. It just basically gets stuck up under that epiglottis. It's like a tongue on the back of the tongue, essentially. And obviously blocks the trachea. So when we go through and do that, somebody remaining calm, somebody going through their drills, not panicking, getting the airway at the lowest point, getting those back blows initiated if it is partial, and if it is a complete where there is no noise, going through and initiating the 5 and 5 sequence in New Zealand. For your Australian listeners, 3 and 3 I think it is, but it is 5 and 5 here in the NZ. 5 back blows, 5 chest compressions or sternum thrusts, sternal thrusts, and going through and repeating that process until one or two things occurs. 1, the object comes out, or 2, the child loses consciousness due to obviously going through the process of respiratory arrest. And obviously once that starts, once the child loses consciousness, we commence resuscitation. And it is your normal protocol, or standard CPR protocol, 30 compressions followed by 2 rescue breaths. Calm is the key.
And that's been a big shift, because they were talking about children, and there was a window there, and not long ago, where it was like children are different and things. It's actually become standardised across.
It is interesting, and it's still recommended by Resuscitation Council, 30 to 2 for everybody, and understand the rationale behind that. For choking incidents and stuff like that. I don't want to segue too much into the adult side of the house or anything else like that. But anybody who's done actual point of injury resuscitation, especially when you don't have all the different bells and whistles of bag valve mask, airway adjunct, suction, everything else like that. When adults go down, it's generally because of cardiac incident. 99% is because of some sort of cardiac incident Whereas children, 99% of the time, it's drowning, choking. When that happens, it's unlikely, or it's less likely they're going to release from the stomach. Whereas cardiac issues, of course, the body's already going through its different processes of cardiogenic shock. It's removing blood from the stomach, so you're already on the back foot in terms of potential for involuntary vomiting. And then once they, go down the ground and in that space, then start releasing from the mouth. Well, what I'm getting at is, do you really want to put your lips on there, and how effective is your rescue breathing going to be? Plus, a lot of the studies coming out now supports, compression and CPR.
Yes.
But for children, absolutely. And again, I think what we need to focus on is the objective. What are we actually trying to do here? We're trying to go through, and if the object is not coming up after back blows, or not freeing after back blows, not being ejected through sternal compression, and it's not come up after 30 compressions, then this object needs to be pushed down further into the respiratory tree, so that we can at least get 50% going on, which means obviously the one lung. So
one lung's better than no lungs.
Basically, stay calm, follow your drills, and what this comes down to, everybody, if you're listening out there, if you're still engaged with this thing, please train hard, train often, because we never rise to the occasion. I literally couldn't count how many incidents I've been through. I could here in New Zealand, a bit of a black cloud and a bit of a magnet there, but the last one was 3 weeks ago. But going through, and it's as a first aider, going through, nobody rises to the occasion. Nobody does that. You fall to your level of training. If you don't train hard and train often, then that's how it's going to be. It's like weightlifting.
Yeah.
You train for a New Zealand title, and then you don't lift for a
6
year,
months.
and you expect to go out on the stage and win again.
Yeah, you're on some special vitamins.
Man,
So Steph, on that, because let's talk, because in the actual training room, we're talking about training hard, training often. And we're going to be delivering, you guys are going to be delivering this choking piece specific for us, but we also want to make sure we're really equipping our families as well. We have them max 50 hours a week, some 16 hours. So they're with family, huge amounts of times. And being a mum, you're busy, you might be typing away, you might be, and then there's something comes up, or it can happen. It can happen.
Look, I'm toilet training one, and I've got an 8-month-old, so there's some very conflicting things going on at feeding time at the moment. It's like, there's definitely something on the walls over that end, and this one's eating. What do I, where's my attention going? It's, again, had I not had the background with Simon and going through all this stuff with him, I probably would have made the stuff on the walls choice more often than not, because in your head you think they've been pretty good. My littlest one, Kay, he's 8 months. He's doing a pretty good job at eating now, so he's pretty self-sustainable. I can go and handle the poo on the wall incident now.
Perfect.
But now, because of everything that I've got, I'm like, no, can clean that later. I'm literally here with this guy until he's done, because it takes one time, and it takes one lapse of concentration, which is so hard when you're sleep deprived, and so hard when you have got all these other things going on. And I just want to tap onto what Simon was saying about, again, from the centre side, but also from the home side, that staying calm. One thing that Simon will talk about a lot in the courses, or all our trainers will, is actually just taking a breath. So we say, worst case scenario, a minute to 90 seconds. You have time to take a breath and assess, because what we know from all of our students, from all of the people who've been into stuff, the people who rush in generally cause, it's the same as anything. If you don't take that pregnant pause to have a think about what you're actually going to do, you can actually make things worse. And especially when, again, in the centre, you've got lots of kids. The first thing you go, oh, and then all the other kids, and then like Simon said, you end up with more casualties. So again, taking that real breath is a big one. But just circling back to what you're saying, so one of the things that we've been working on together is trying to find ways that we can help educate the wider community.
Yes.
Especially, one thing we find a lot, obviously as a first aid training provider, is we get a lot of inquiries for companies or play centres and things like that. And especially they're trying to get mums and dads into courses, but they can't do a whole day. It's just impractical. And we've tried running summit centres with kids allowed, and we broke it up into 2, and it was like, mayhem because you just can't get the learning experience that you need to be able to do this stuff. So one of the things we've been speaking about is coming back to the centre at some stage in the near future and delivering a short and pointed discussion around this topic and any other topics that people may have to try and make sure that we know that and this is again something we talk about with all our clients. It's not just about the 6 hours, 8 hours, however many hours in a day that people are in a high risk environment. Life is a high risk environment. There's 24 hours in a day, and driving.
And you want to be prepped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
I'm just thinking now, like again, part of our policy, children are not to walk around with food, right? That's a policy.
Totally. Yep.
Go to the beach, Ryan. I said that.
Yeah. Oh man.
Kids are running around, and that's one of that. I remember. I don't mind talking to this because. When you're a mum and you're like, you're tired and one of the children's just wandering around eating a piece of toast. I pick my battle, but I know the battle I want to pick, and that's my child not choking. That is why we have really strict thing about that, and it's even with our littlest, they are sitting. They are sitting, and in that scenario as well, that's why you'll find a lot of centres have moved away from high chairs, and they're strapped in. Bro, a kid choking, and you're trying to. You're trying to panic to get them out of the... Oh, geez, I'm trying to unclip them and they're choking. Mate, you've lost precious time. Yeah. But it's why we do it. But again, you're talking about life. Go to, we were at the markets a couple of weeks ago and there's food stalls and kids just rolling around eating caramel popcorn or... It can happen. Yeah, so you just want to be...
It's one of the doozies too, man. It's
popcorn, bro.
Popcorn, hot dogs, all the stuff that you...
that they don't chew properly, that they'll just... Because they'll hoof it down. Yeah. They'll hoof it down. And so it is that stuff. So that's why I think the importance of what you guys will provide in that scenario for not just our community. We're talking Papa more, and we're lucky to have you guys in the community that we can lean on for that sort of stuff. We just can't recommend it enough. Let's be prepared.
It's incredibly empowering.
Yes.
And it's a topic which is 24/7. You don't get to pick and choose, and this is something that I educate and really push hard. Is basically simplicity is the key. Stay calm because you don't get to pick and choose. When you roll up, you could have somebody run across, filling up your car at BP. Mother comes running up to you with a blue kid or whatever else. You gotta act. You gotta go. That's it. You don't get to wake up in the morning. Oh, today, you know what? I'm feeling like doing first aid today. Let's go do this or whatever else. Yeah. And so it is. It's not just about future focus. And I commend you guys. The way that you're already rolling. There are so many things about what you guys do as a business, which I look at and I go, this is so solid. We've only used Future Focus, but, I've gone through, I've looked at various different reports, open source information, intelligence, which has been gathered, and look at that, and I look at what is out there, and some of these reports, which are conducted here in New Zealand, are terrifying. Like the way that, and people just don't know any better. Some of the stuff is just absolutely wild. And unfortunately, I'm not privy to disclose, obviously my sources for some of the stuff. I mean, some of the open source stuff is easy to find. But it's just absolutely wild. Some of the stuff which is going on out there, crazy. But 24/7 topic, empowering people is what it's all about. And airway is one of the big two. We look at that, obviously, trauma, particularly around hemorrhages is the other one. Air going in and out, blood going around and around. Everything kind of comes back to that. If you've got air going in and out, well, that's good. And if you've got blood going around and around and around, not just, preventing from exiting externally from the body, but internally as well. We've got to kind of think about that stuff. Those are good things. And it's actually, it's a real privilege to be working with a client, being yourself, obviously, in this instance, who's so receptive to this, because, there has been a lot of exchanges over the years with us where you're expected to make wine out of water. And it's like, come on, man, I can't teach you everything that we teach in a 9-hour day in 2 hours. You're taking the piss. And that's one of the issues with industry. We have no compromise around that. We refuse to, because at the end of the day, we're selling ourselves short. So, yeah, man.
Your name's on it, eh? Your name's on it. And that's a mana thing, man. That's a respect thing.
100%.
We're with you. And I think... we respect, number one, putting pressure on any business to perform is important, and you've got to go and find people who can put pressure on business. And that's a business lesson. And, you can't go out and say that we're doing everything we can for children, and then you've got a glaring gap that you're not. And we're open to that. That's just what it is. Yes, we are a business, but ultimately we look after people's most precious gifts. We are privileged to look after that. So we want to support our teams. And again, there's other. I can only speak for Future Focus, but there's other fantastic operators around here who probably have the same inkling or desire. This is just the start of what I think for us as our teams is what you're saying is it's empowering.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I know if something happens, I'm pretty much good to go. I want to sit at a 7 out of 10, and if I have to perform to a 10 out of 10, I can get there. I don't want to be sitting at a 2 and try to get to a 5. You know what I mean? That's the real key here. So guys, we really look forward to it because we're going to document some of this stuff, and we're going to really make sure that. And we've already had it. We've already said to our teams, we're going to equip you with all this stuff. This stuff's going to happen. We've got dates locked in and things. We're excited. We're excited because it's just, for me, if you sit around you guys for a while and listen, it's quite inspiring hearing because you do deliver a pretty simple message. Again, don't panic. That one's just simple. What that looks like in execution is different. Yeah. But
train hard, train
to go, correct. 2 to a 5, then or 7. That the likelihood of not panicking is very, very is much higher. There's a higher probability in that space. So, guys, let's leave it at that. But we're really excited about it. We appreciate your expertise and your passion, and look out for what's going on. PracMed. You guys on socials too, eh?
Sure.
Yep,
big on the Instagram.
Yep.
A little on the Facebook. We do have a LinkedIn presence. It's kind of a weird platform. I'm still trying to work out how it kind of works, but we're on the social media, and any questions that you got, we engage freely on there. And it's not about, we'll never make fun of somebody. It doesn't matter what level that you have in terms of training, whatever else. So if you want to discuss something or whatever else, then get at us. I don't leave anybody hanging for any longer than a few days. Sometimes the inbox blows up, so it takes me a little while to clear out, but we reply and we answer everybody because this is not something that I invented. It's not something that PracMed or any of the other people who are much more qualified and experienced than I am within the world of med who work for this company invented. We're simply passing the baton, passing the torch, and exposing more people to this because I can't be around Steph 24/7. I can't be around my kids 24/7. So if they do get T-boned at an intersection, or if my child does choke at Future Focus on, or wherever, it doesn't really matter.
Breaks an arm at a park or something.
Dude, I want more people to be confident and competent, not just qualified. And this is the major issue with this industry in this country, is that for so long, and Kiwis don't know any better, but for so long, it's been pushed as needing qualifications and tick a box and stuff like that. But it just has not been dealt with in a manner which is going to actually help you from a pragmatic perspective when things are going south. And our intent is to drive change within the industry and just simply for better outcomes. So, thank you for having us through. I appreciate that. Thanks for engaging, and looking forward to that journey that we're going to take and empowering more people with legit and real first aid, man. It's good.
Totally, and it's it's something we hope you never ever need to use.
Correct.
Where,
that's the key.
It's the parachute, right? You hope you never ever need it, but the reality is people do, and again, like you said, it's just having that empowered ability to make a decision in that moment. So thank you again, and looking forward to spreading the message further.
Awesome team. Thank you very much. Awesome.